How you doing? IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling with Ryan Roberts, Sean Stiers. We had, I guess, kind of an extended 3-day weekend, as it turned out, because we had a trifecta of conflicts yesterday. All three of me and Vince and Jesse all had stuff going on, so I was hoping that 2 out of 3 were going to be here to make the show happen, but that didn't happen. So here we are. How are you today, Ryan?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. It's a beautiful Tuesday, I guess. I was literally on a podcast yesterday, and I was like, I did the recruiting hour show, and I was like, yeah, the guy's gonna commit in March 25th, and I'm like, oh dang, dude, we're in May now. Like, where the heck are we right now? I completely forgot what month it was, dude. Yeah, seriously. I completely forgot what month we were in at that point. This is kind of the it's the lull before the storm, I guess, for the lack of a better term, because June is official visitor weekend every single weekend, basically, from there, and some during the weeks, and it's gonna be very busy, man. So just kind of lulling in the weeds a little bit and try to get a lot of work done. So
you're gonna make a lot of people happy. You're gonna make a lot of people happy with all that June business going on. Right?
Well, that's the thing, though, Sean. That's the thing, is that I can put out as much what I consider quality content as possible, but if some things will go Notre Dame's way, or a kid doesn't commit to Notre Dame, then they all hate me anyway. You know,
there's only so much you can control.
Right, exactly.
That's right. You're just the middleman. You're not the one who's actually making the decisions out there.
You need to tell people that sometimes, man. I have like angry people on Twitter commenting on like recruiting stories and stuff, and I'm just like, guys, like you understand that I have no control over what's happening right now, right? I'm just reporting it. Like, you get that, right? But
we're talking about 16 to 18-year-olds, you know. Give them, kind of back off a little bit. Breathe.
It was like a wide receiver conversation. I posted an article about the wide receiver class in 2025 and some things that I'm worried about and some things that are good on the horizon that could potentially fix the class, that type of stuff, Sean. And this one guy starts going up on Twitter on like, fire Mike Brown, get him out of here, like all this stuff. I'm like, dude,
oh boy,
I'm just talking here. Like, stop, please. Don't do that to me.
Barely finished one spring, and it's time to fire the guy.
Seriously.
Okay.
Seriously.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep Chancey Stuckey, that guy said. I'm like, oh, okay. Sounds good, man. Sounds good.
Yeah. That worked out well, you know, last time I checked. Well, we've got a lot that we're going to cover in today's show. We're going to talk about this primetime kickoff and some recruiting impact that comes along with not just this primetime game, but primetime games in general, kind of recruiting in the state of Texas, get an update on that. After that, we're going to hear from Notre Dame point guard Olivia Miles, who, of course, missed this past season with that knee injury that she suffered. I guess it's been about 14 going on 15 months ago, something like that. But I caught up with her. So we're going to hear all about her injury update, playing with Hannah Hidalgo, and a lot more coming up here in just a few minutes. And then after that, we've got more, because Jesse's going to join me for Rapid Fire with more Notre Dame football, some NFL stuff. The full schedule release for the NFL is coming out tomorrow, but we've got kind of we've got a couple games that we've already got announced that have been leaked out there, including Tom Brady's first broadcast. I'm looking forward to seeing Tom Brady in his first game on Fox.
Do you think he's going to do well? I feel like he's probably a good announcer. I don't know. I feel like he's good.
The guy knows so much about football, and
sure.
I think a lot of people, or at least maybe some people, thought, well, you know, he's retiring. He's not jumping right into it. How into this broadcast career is he going to be? But listening to some of the sports media reporters, it sounds like he was using this year. You know, he obviously knew his team, and he game planned for defenses that he would up against. He used the last year to really get more familiar with, teams across the board. He did some work with Kevin Burkhardt, I guess, doing, mock play-by-play games and stuff like that over the course of the last year. So I think he's going to be pretty good at it. I'm anxious to see him.
Well, we got a couple of things coming down the pipeline, I guess. I mean, obviously with the Brady thing, but I was listening to the Kelsey's podcast the other day, and they were kind of talking about how I guess there's going to be an announcement at some point that I guess Jason's going to be joining the broadcasting stream on ESPN as well. So I mean, we've got some former players that are going to dip their feet in. Hopefully, they're better than Jason Witten. I know that was not the best one in the world. But
it's a low bar. That's a low bar.
Yes. More Tony Romo than Jason Witten is.
I'm going to say Tony Romo up the because Romo was the year before Witten, so he really upped the bar. Witten didn't quite clear it, but it's a pretty low bar if Witten is the bar. No offense, Jason Witten. He's a Hall of Fame player, but not as a broadcaster.
Oh, great tight end. Great tight end.
Yes.
Worst announcer I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not good. All right. Well, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, they announced the primetime kickoff today, August 31st. It's going to be 7:30 on ABC. And, of course, ESPN's College Game Day didn't take them too long to announce that they're going to be there as well. Primetime kickoff, probably the least surprising news of, like going into this season for Notre Dame. But this is going to be the fourth straight year that Notre Dame has opened the season away from home with a primetime game. Last year, of course, it was in against Navy in Dublin. 2 years ago at Ohio State, 3 years ago at Florida State, all primetime games. So, Ryan, from a recruiting aspect, I'm curious. I mean, Notre Dame plays, obviously, a ton of games in primetime. What kind of impact do you think that these marquee games have on Notre Dame's recruiting efforts?
I mean, there's a lot of ways that we could take that question, Sean. I think from the broadest spectrum, one thing that you hear a lot of Notre Dame commits and just targets in general talk about is the NBC contract that Notre Dame has, obviously, right? And that they're the game on every single week. Like there's no, jockeying for a spot in a certain, it's a time frame and what channel are they going to be on? Like, where Notre Dame football is going to be each and every week outside of the 1 week a year that they're on Peacock, I guess, right? But regardless, NBC is a big thing for Notre Dame. And it's really important, I think, for potential Notre Dame recruits and targets, because one thing that we need to always consider with Notre Dame is that they are a national brand, right? Mm-hmm. So they're pulling kids from Hawaii, from Texas, from the East Coast, from the West Coast. I mean, all over the place, right? I mean, you have kids from all over that roster. It's not like you just have Indiana-based kids, just Midwest-based kids at Notre Dame. So I think for the parents, for the family, for the support system, being able to see your player or your kid or whatever every single week, I think it's pretty big time for them, right? So that's why the NBC thing matters so much to a lot of recruits, because they're nationally seen every single week. And I think that this just kind of plays into that, right? The first game of the week, Notre Dame, 7:30, Texas A&M at Kyle Field. I think that's huge for recruits and parents alike, because they're going to be able to see the game on TV. They're going to see the product, and all offseason, Mike Denbrock, that offensive staff, and then obviously Coach Freeman as the big guy up top, they're going to be talking about what their expectations are this year and why you should buy into Notre Dame and why it's important and where they're going and the trajectory they're on and all the goals that they have. And the first game of the year, you're going to be able to see it. Were they BSing? Are they fulfilling their promises? Are they where they think they should be? Are they trajectorying in the right direction? All those things I think are very much transparent in that first game of the year. And then you could argue that it's possible that at the end of the year, that Texas A&M might be the best team that Notre Dame plays all year. I mean, it's possible. They have that type of talent. I mean,
very
it's
possible
between them and Florida State and a couple others, but you have a chance to see a team in prime time. Everyone's going to be watching in a big stadium that registers on the Richter scale, right? The 12th man, all that good stuff. I think that is really going to resonate with the Notre Dame fans, the Notre Dame recruits, the Notre Dame commits, and the Notre Dame key targets, because they're going to be able to see the product on the field, the 2026 kids, the 2025 kids that are already committed, the couple that maybe still have a decision to be made. I think that those things will really resonate with them, being able to see them game one.
Well, and it's probably not a complete standalone. There'll be some competition on some other networks, but as you push into prime time, there are going to be fewer other games going on at the same time. And just the fact that it's a primetime game always says this is a game of significance. And the fact that you're, like you said, you're going to Texas A&M, it's going to be a big stage, and all those factors that you talked about. I mean, they'll be tested by that A&M defense as well. But I think that there are a lot more questions that A&M has on the offensive side of the ball going into this season than there are on the defensive side of the ball.
Yep.
So,
well,
that Mike Denbrock and Riley Leonard, they're going to be tested right away down there.
They are. I mean, defensively, there was a lot of things that were in place. And then obviously with Mike Elko coming in, I think that you feel pretty good about the defense getting turned around. But offensively, Texas A&M, it's going to be as good as the injuries allowed them to be, right? You have a starting quarterback, Connor Weigman, coming off of an injury. You have an offensive line that was injury riddled a year before. Like, you need to have a little bit of consistency and durability in 2024 if you're Texas A&M. I would say this too, Sean, and I don't know if people think about it like this, but I think this is an interesting conversation because we'll talk about the Texas impact, because I think that we still need to keep reminding ourselves that Notre Dame is more and more under Marcus Freeman getting back into Texas, which is big time. And I think that's probably one of my biggest points. But I also think that there is a layer to this matchup, because people always ask about, what is a matchup that you would love to see Notre Dame have against and be able to play against. And I think Texas A&M is one of my preferred ones. Like, the University of Texas would be another one, because they are ones in this transfer portal NIL world that we live in today. And let's call it what it actually is, the pay for play era of college football. Texas A&M is one of the schools, and they can justify it now, but they are one of the schools that do the pay for play thing. We know the oil money they have, we know the NIL, we know all that type of stuff, right? All the donors, all that. So they're ones that manipulate the system and be able to hand out to kids and entice them to come. And we all know that, right? Notre Dame is on the complete other side of the coin, in the sense of Notre Dame is going to utilize NIL, but in the right way, right? Let's help these kids make a profit off of their name, image, and likeness by working with companies and working with branding and doing those types of things. I do think that it's going to be an interesting parallel to see a team that maybe does things more on the right side and a team that utilizes the system in a completely different way. And if Notre Dame's able to show that, like, hey, man, you guys can use NIL all you want, but we're still going to come down here and kick your butt in Kyle Field at 7:30 on a Saturday, I think that shows that Notre Dame is progressing in the right direction while utilizing the system correctly, which I think will show kids you can do it the right way, still get paid, and beat those teams that utilize the system in the wrong way. I think that's an interesting parallel.
Were you the one who used the word trajecting that Salty is throwing back at you?
I meant projecting. I was moving upward. Salty, I know in the chat.
They're on the right trajectory. Come on, Salty.
Yes, Salty.
Get off your thesaurus out there. Just give the guy a break. Give everybody. Come on.
But he's absolutely right in the chat. His last thing where he said, "What's right with college football versus what's wrong with college football?" And I agree, man. The name, image, and likeness thing is great. And I am all for kids making money off of their name, image, and likeness. But we, again, have thrown everything into the same bucket. NIL and pay for play are not the same thing.
Right.
They're not.
Right.
And I think that shows
Notre Dame uses the NIL system.
Exactly.
I would say a vast majority, at least, of the SEC and some other big schools use the pay per play system.
And I think that if Notre Dame is able to show that they can use it the right way, players can still make money off of their name, image, and likeness and win big football games in prime time, like this first game against Texas A&M. I think that could be very beneficial for their program moving forward long term.
Right. Ant VR, trajecting is the present participle of the verb traject, which is an archaic verb that means to transport, transmit, or transpose. Clearly.
Hear that, Salty?
You were
Suck it, man. Suck it, Salty.
I think you, at least somewhere in the deep recesses of your brain, you knew what trajecting meant.
Hey, man, I was
properly.
I was an English literature major, so if anybody knows it, it's me.
Yeah. Boom. So this is going to be Notre Dame's first regular season game in the state of Texas since they went to Texas in 2016. Now, obviously, they played in the Cotton Bowl, or I guess the second time it was considered the Rose Bowl, but they played in Arlington anyway in the college football playoff a couple of different times. But I'm talking about regular season games. So just that aspect of this, being back there in Texas, where they obviously, they don't get there a lot. And Texas A&M is, it's not that far from Austin, where you've got a guy like Jaden Greathouse from. And I mean, there's some other guys on the roster as well from Texas. So how much do you think this helps recruiting in that state?
I think it's big time, Sean, because when we think of big time high school football and big time football in general, Texas is the king, right? I mean, I'm sure some people would argue for Florida. Some would probably argue for California. Some would even probably argue for Georgia in today's world. And I get it fully, right? But Texas is the heartbeats of high school football and high school recruiting. I mean, you can find so many great players. I was actually digging into the 2026 offer list before we got on, and there are 14 players, at least, unless I'm missing someone, that are offered in the 2026 class from the state of Texas. They were one of the top 2 or 3 highest in the class, along with Florida and California, right? So Texas is very important for Notre Dame moving forward, because I had highlighted the 5 classes before Marcus Freeman became head coach. So up until 2022, because obviously that was Brian Kelly's last class that Marcus Freeman had to keep together. They only had 3 Texas players in that 5-year span heading up to Marcus Freeman becoming the head coach at Notre Dame.
I didn't do that research, but I had a feeling it was as sparse as that. So, I mean,
it was
fortunately,
crazy.
There's something else we can blame on Brian Kelly, not recruiting the important state of Texas well enough.
Sean, 2023, Notre Dame had 4 signees from Texas in one class, which was more than the 5 years previously under Brian Kelly as a recruiter. And again, not here to take a shot at Brian Kelly, but why are we not dipping our toes into the talent pool that is the state of Texas more often? That doesn't make any sense. And then you obviously start to get the Jaden Greathouse types of players. And when you look at the 2026 offer list, I mean, there are some talented running backs on that list. There's a wide receiver, Jordan Clay, who's going to be coming back for his second visit this offseason to Notre Dame, who's a really talented football player as well. There's a defensive lineman that had Tiki Ola, who's been to campus this offseason as well. So Texas is always going to have some big-time football players, man, and big-time high school recruits. And I think Notre Dame is doing a disservice not to be in the Lone Star State more consistently.
Yeah, I completely agree. And maybe they, need to find a way to get another Shamrock Series game down there soon. We were talking, I think it was last week, about some Shamrock potential destinations. They haven't been to Houston for a Shamrock Series game before. They've obviously been to Jerry World. Why not maybe every 5 years try to get to one of those different places potentially?
Yep. I think it's a premier spot. I mean, it really, because John, I would say it like this. If you aren't consistently attacking a spot from a recruiting perspective, those kids start to believe that they don't fit up there, right? They start to believe that in their minds. But then you get a Jaden Greathouse to come on a visit or two to Texas, and he's like, you know what? I could thrive up here. This might not be like what I pictured of myself when I was growing up, but I get up to South Bend, Indiana. I see the beautiful campus. I see the academic facilities. I see the athletic facilities, and I'm like, oh, I can do this here, man. This is different. This is a very different type of vibe. So I think that aspect can't be undersold, is that getting in the front of the Texas-born athletes or Texas-raised athletes, that can showcase a lot of great upside to being a member of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
I mean, you kind of hit the numbers there a little bit. They've currently got 5 guys on the roster from the state of Texas. That includes Logan Thomas, who obviously started in Texas, finished in Ohio, but Leonard Moore is going to join the team this summer as well for workouts going into training camp. So that'll make 6. Like the way they're hitting it right now, are you pretty satisfied, or do they need to even ratchet it up even more from what they're doing?
I don't think that it can get to a level that I would say is like, I don't know if there's a level that I'm like, okay, that's enough, right? The more you can get into that state, I think it's the better, because we've talked about in 2026, they've dipped their feet at a big level in California a little bit as far as prioritizing some players. They've been in Florida. I mean, we talk about the 2026 quarterback right now, Sean. I can guarantee that it's going to be a kid from Florida, right? Which one it is, that's the conversation that we'll continue to have until one of them pulls the trigger. But right now, Noah Grubbs and Brady Hart, that's the conversation. So which Florida quarterback wants to come down? And I think that when you talk about being a mindful and progressive and thoughtful recruiting staff, you need to understand trends of things, man. You need to understand the trends. Where's the talent coming from? Texas, California, Florida, Georgia. You know where Notre Dame has hit more since Marcus Freeman took over? In those states. North Carolina is an underrated state. What did they do this past cycle in 2024? They got 3 kids out of the state of North Carolina. You need to find opportunities to get into talent pools. And I think that's one thing under Marcus Freeman that I'm most proud of from him on the recruiting side is that he's not afraid to go down to Texas. He's not afraid to go down to Florida. He's not settling for some easy pools, maybe in a Midwestern school and that type of thing. And I know some people from a purist perspective might get a little mad because they're like, oh, we should be getting Chicago kids more. And I don't necessarily disagree. There's a couple kids in Chicago that I think have been misevaluated the last couple of years. But overall, Marcus Freeman wanting to get more consistently down into Texas, Florida, California, Georgia. I'm all for it, man. Do that all the time, and you're going to find a lot of good football players.
I mean, there's all this. Obviously, the state of Texas is vast, but there are dense population areas where just across
They're
the
hubs,
board,
man.
the football. Yeah, that's right. The
Yeah.
hubs for high school football. That's why Texas high school football, Friday Night Lights, the whole thing, that it has the reputation that it has. You obviously should be in this close to Chicago for another dense area. You should be in on the top guys out of that city every year. You should be in that mix. But I agree with what you're saying. Just throw some darts out there in Texas, and you're going to find some talent no matter where those darts land.
I think that the best way for Notre Dame to get to where we want to go, and I do think they're heading there. I do think it's projecting that way, right? I think that it's going in that direction, is that you need to keep the elite talents in Chicago and Indiana at home. Notre Dame needs to do that more consistently. And then you need to hit the hotbeds, man. Yes, you can get your occasional kid out in Hawaii if you want. You can get a St. Louis kid from time to time. We talked about with Jeremiah Love and Christian Gray and those types, right? But overall, I think the winning formula is lock up your home base and then hit the hotbeds. That's how I think that you build it the right way moving forward.
Yep, I concur. All right, a couple of different things. Thank you for the super chats. As always, Anthony, everything going well here. We just had some scheduling conflicts, so nothing major yesterday, just some scheduling stuff. So fortunately, he was also saying he was hoping for some CBS theme music in that first Notre Dame Texas A&M game. Where you won't have to wait long because Notre Dame at Purdue was announced as a 3:30 Eastern time afternoon kickoff, and it will be on CBS as part of that new CBS Big Ten package. So it's coming soon to a TV near you. Notre Dame will be back on CBS. We haven't seen that very often. It's typically been like the Navy games, of a few years back would show up on CBS, and that seemed like that was just about it. Diane also saying, speaking of injury, the latest on Riley Leonard. I mean, it's not even been a month since spring ended, so we're not going to get any official update or anything like that. We're not going to get any official word until after the summer going into training camp.
I thought it was over. I mean, Diane, I thought it was positive, obviously, though, that the last couple practices he was out there going through every drill. He was unpadded, obviously. He had the red jersey on like you would typically see of a quarterback, so he was non-contact through that. But I think that it was positive, and now you have, we're in May right now, right? So you got several months now to ramp back up and get ready for fall ball. So as long as he's ready then, I know that I do know Riley personally, and I will say this, is that I have no doubt that from a student of the game perspective, he's going to be mentally prepared. He's going to be utilizing this time of, if he's not able to fully participate physically, he's going to be working the mental side of things to make sure that he's ready to go.
Crunching that film, looking at Mike, digging deep in Mike Denbrock's playbook and all that kind of good stuff. Getting ready to go.
Absolutely.
All right, Ryan, appreciate it as always. And
Yes,
of course, you can find Ryan's stuff, irishbreakdown.com, and all the good juicy tidbits and intel on the new Champions Lounge. So if you're not a subscriber, not a member of the Champions Lounge, I don't know what you're waiting for. Get in there and you'll find all that intel from Ryan and Brian and everything else.
I hope that was a good warm-up for everyone for Olivia Miles, because obviously she's the headliner of tonight's show.
That's right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care. All right. So Ryan's going to check out. Olivia Miles coming in. Jesse will have some more football, Notre Dame football conversation coming up in rapid fire after Olivia Miles. The disclaimer, this is a recorded interview. We recorded this yesterday afternoon to work around Olivia's schedule. But a lot of good stuff here with the Notre Dame point guard. Got an update on the injury, and talked about the upcoming season, the transfers, playing with Hannah Hidalgo, and more. So that is all right now with Fighting Irish point guard Olivia Miles. All right. Well, we're here with the one and only Olivia Miles. Olivia, thanks for stopping in. Good to have you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. It's my first time on a Notre Dame related podcast, so I'm excited.
Well, I hope that I serve Notre Dame well then anyway, like having you on, because I know you've done you're always on the national shows and all that kind of stuff. It's great to have you here. I was thinking before we started that it's I don't know. I'll see what you think. To me, it's hard to believe that you've been here long enough to have your degree already, but you've got your degree. You're getting ready to do commencement this weekend. Is that pretty exciting?
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's also like I feel like I've been here forever, but at the same time, I feel like I got here yesterday. So it's really rewarding to graduate from a university like this, just given the challenge that it brings. But I'm very excited, and I can't wait for my graduate degree.
I bet. So what is your undergrad in then?
So I studied political science with a minor in business economics, kind of meshing the two concepts that I really like, and I'll do a master's program in business as well. So I'm kind of continuing my business track record, but Notre Dame has the business notoriety, so I'm ready to kind of tackle that challenge as well.
Is there a specific business concentration to that, or is it just straight up MBA type thing?
No, it's not an MBA. It's basically a Master of Nonprofit Administration.
Okay.
And basically, you take all the same classes as an MBA, but you kind of learn how a different side of business that way.
Okay, excellent. So that'll keep you plenty busy then. I'm sure this upcoming year.
It will, definitely.
Well, I think that what most people watching or listening want to know is how you feel right now after missing all of last season with that knee injury. So how are you feeling right now?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. I'm doing well. I'm excited to take the court again. Not that I haven't taken the court in practice and whatnot this past year, but officially step on the court, record stats, do all of that fun stuff. So I'm excited to kind of get back out there with the girls. They've done so well this year, and it's been different for me to kind of cheer in a different way and support them in other ways that I hadn't before. But it's definitely tools that I added to my toolkit, and different perspectives that I've gained.
How tough is that to have to sit, because someone who's at your level, an elite level of basketball, obviously, you go basically for most of your life. Had you ever had any injury that had kept you out for any significant amount of time?
No, this is my first. So it was significantly hard. It was just tough to kind of wrap my head around the fact that it actually happened. And then once I did that, I had to wrap my head around the fact that I wouldn't be playing for another year. So it was just a lot of like acceptance, and kind of just learning to be okay with the situation that I'm in. And I think my teammates and, my coaches, they kind of helped me through that, along with some people on the external side. But I kind of learned to develop my mind in different ways, and that kind of helped me with the struggle a bit.
Well, in the early part of it, Dara Mabry obviously had her knee injury, maybe a month or so before yours, and then she kind of had to hold off on her surgery as well. Did you two kind of go through some of the initial stages of that kind of together, and did that help?
Yes, it helped tremendously, and that's kind of who I was talking about, who kind of helped me through it. Dara and I had surgery 2 days apart from each other, and so we were in the rehab room together all summer, getting right, and her presence, although we kind of had slightly different injuries, her presence there in my recovery process, I'm just so grateful for it. She helped me in ways that I can't even explain, and I'm so grateful for her, that she was able to guide me through that, and I was able to do the same for her.
Well, so we've seen some of the videos of you working out and doing some practice and stuff like that. Are you 100% right now? Do you think you're 100%?
I'd say I'm getting close. I can't really tell because I haven't really like been in full game situations, but I feel very good. And I feel ready to play a game. You know, I'm still building my shape, my wind. It's tough after you sit on your butt for a year and do nothing.
I bet.
It's tough to kind of get back up and play at a high level that college demands of you. So that's the part that I'm really working through right now. And once I get through that, I feel like I'll be closer to 100%.
Well, the last I remember hearing before you announced, I think, what was it, around the UConn game, that you weren't going to play the rest of the season. You hadn't even been medically cleared to play at that point, was what I heard. And, you know, there was obviously a ton of speculation. Is Olivia going to play? Is she not going to play? You know, because even after you made that announcement, there was still a lot of speculation about, well, why isn't she going to play? And that kind of thing. So like, was there ever, like, as you were going through that, was there a point where you said, well, if I feel good by this date, you know, whatever it happened to be, you know, I'll give it a shot? Or what was sort of that part of the thing like?
That was every day. I was like, okay, like I feel good. Maybe I'll just throw on a jersey. But then it kind of got later and later into the season, and I was like, like I don't want to waste a year. But in the back of my head, I knew that I was just kind of going to sit this one out. My injury happened at such a weird time. You know, I couldn't recover fast enough to come back. And then when I did recover, it was basically the end of the season. So it was tough timing, but I trust that everything happens for a reason. And while I did want to go out there and play so badly with them, you know, I made it through that tough time, and my time is now to come play again.
So when, you know, like when we see you out there on the court, it's mostly, you know, that kind of stuff. It's still light activities that you're really doing right now, kind of going back to, you know, like you were saying, you hadn't really like pushed your wind and that kind of stuff so far, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of started going full go, basically 5-on-5 in February through April period. And that's kind of when I was really ramping up, like pickup. I was getting in practice with the girls full time. So that was kind of like February was kind of the start of it, where I started to do like 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and then I gradually made my way to 5-on-5, and I'm full go to do that right now, which I'm grateful for.
See, I think that's where like people felt like maybe you're trolling them a little bit, you know, like not that you were, but like that's, you know, there's, oh, well, look, she's doing this, and, you know, all those different kind of things. You know, I think that everyone just got their expectations up too high. Yeah,
I think with this injury, it's tough because the real full like recovery period is like ideal time is a year. So it's like you can do stuff, and then it's like you can't really until you feel, you know, like you're ready to come back.
So now, you know, you're getting ready to come back, and Hannah Hidalgo comes back this year as well, and everyone wants to know how two great point guards are going to play together. So what's your answer to that when you and Hannah Hidalgo are out there together at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be scary. We've kind of already been playing in practice together and whatnot. And, you know, I think everyone's kind of having their own thoughts and opinions about it. But, you know, we know what's going on in the internal, and we're just so excited to play with each other. And, you know, we're going to bounce off each other really well. I think people forget I'm a pass first guard. So I do pass. I give the ball up. I set people up. You know, that's kind of my forte. So if that's what I have to do, I'm going to do it. I'm also going to score, of course, and be aggressive. But I have 4 or 5 amazing players around me at all times. And, you know, they're going to have to get in their spots, and I'm best at doing that. So I can't wait to kind of share the floor with another person who kind of thinks like that. She's more obviously on the scoring and aggressive end, but I think we're going to complement each other really well. And, you know, I think her passing is pretty underrated, so she can get people open too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you both have highlight reel, you know, type passes. It's interesting, you know, because I've talked about this. I mean, Hannah signed to play here well before, and, you know, like signed to play here well before your injury. Like you two were supposed to play together last year. I feel like people are maybe overthinking this a little bit. What do you think?
Agree. I mean, I think, like I said, I think people are really forgetting, like, we came to this place to play with great guards. Like that was the known. Like Notre Dame has great guards and bigs as well, but Notre Dame is guard you in my opinion. But no, we came to this place knowing that you're going to play with 3, 4, 5 amazing guards. Like it just is going to be that way. And if you didn't want to do that, you don't come here. So that's kind of our understanding, and we're just so excited to kind of play and bounce off of each other, and especially with Sony and Maddie coming into her own, and we're just so excited to kind of play off of each other and see how that looks.
Well, you mentioned Maddie, and to be able to get her back, like a forward, like you were saying, it's guard you, but there's a lot of Maddie's one of the really good forwards who are here as well. How important is that to get her back for her 5th year this year?
Just incredible, even off the court, leadership wise, just the amount that she's grown in taking our team, pushing us through adversity, through conflict. We look to her to kind of set the tone, in every practice, every game. And she's really come into her own, like I said, and she's elevated her game, incredibly since I first got here. So seeing her and her full potential, well, not full potential, but rising potential, and, playing at that such high level and bringing that back to a really experienced team, it's going to be tough to guard us. You're going to have to kind of pick your battles with us. So,
well, it's funny with her, like watching it live, it was hard for me to notice some of the little things with her because I've got to watch the ball, so much doing what I do. But then when I went back and watching some of the games, when you see her kind of, directing traffic and, knowing exactly where everyone, all those little things that I think can be taken for granted, basically.
Absolutely. I think we have a lot of players like that, like Sonia, for one. A lot of what she does not show up on the stat sheet. She does just incredible things for our team, whether it's, going and diving into the first row to get a ball for us or sprinting the floor. It's such easy assists to her and easy baskets because you can always count on her to cut properly and just be smart. So we have a lot of players like that. And I think on a really good team, you need players that kind of do like the dirty work. And not saying that we all don't do that at certain points, but they do the little things really, really well.
There's always some who are going to get a little dirtier, right?
Yes, exactly.
So Niele Ivey, speaking of forward, she goes to the transfer portal here within the last few weeks, and she came up pretty big with Leah King from Pitt and Liza Carlin from Marquette. What did you think when you heard about that news that they were both coming here?
We were jumping around. I'll tell you that. We were jumping around. Like Coach called me and was like, "Oh my gosh, we got Leah too. And oh my gosh, we got Liza." Like we were so happy because that's exactly what we need. Just seeing the effects of having a short roster this year, it was tough for us to kind of sustain through the season as it got harder, and the ACC is just a tough conference. So having extra bodies and having grads who are experienced is going to only bring so much, knowledge and wisdom to our team. And also they're just great basketball players that just can add so much value for us.
Well, and I think that some people who kind of look at Leah too, look at the first thing they want to look at is her size. She obviously averaged a double-double this past year in the ACC, which is not easy, especially when it's like 18 points, like 10 and a half rebounds. And she was the focal point of that Pitt team, obviously, when you look at the results. And as someone who's played against her and watched her this year, what would you say to anyone, any of those detractors who want to, use her size against her, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand like why people say some of the things they do, because she is averaging a double-double, like you said, with teams focusing directly on her.
Right.
Oftentimes, like she is playing undersized as well. So it's like she's going to do the same things for us. Like it's the same conference. She's playing against the same girls, the same coaches. They're going to scheme against her the same. The only difference is she has better players around her to kind of put her in better positions to do even better. So, I mean, I'm excited for her to kind of to show everyone her ability. Oh gosh. So sorry.
I thought that was mine for a second.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
No, I'm just. Oh my gosh. That's actually Maddie calling me right now.
That's funny. Come on, it's lunchtime. What are you doing?
No, but I'm just excited for her to kind of show her true ability and mesh in with our team, and she's going to do so well.
Liv, we are in a social media world, and there's like some players delete their social media accounts during the season, some completely avoid it. I realize this is a kind of an even different world that we're in right now because of NIL over the last few years. So I'm curious how you kind of balance all that, being able to try to tune out some of that stuff, but also, the importance of having those platforms because of the different opportunities that come with it as well.
I mean, you don't balance it. You hire people to do that.
that's the way to do it, I guess, right there.
I have a few people who are kind of helping me with all that because I'm very much like basketball. I just want to take care of basketball, but I understand with this growing age and NIL today, it's very important to kind of get out there, and especially for women. Although the game is growing, it's still tough for us to kind of make, monetary value in the spaces that we're in. So
sure.
It's important to kind of get on that early and carry that momentum with you into the league. But no, I don't balance it. I have other people who are kind of helping me with that.
Good answer.
But no, it definitely is a challenge that I'm still learning.
Well, like when you look at, I'm curious, as someone who's obviously a player and a peer of Caitlin Clark, who's obviously, probably in a different stratosphere than anyone else out there right now. How has her phenomenon, again, as someone who was playing, you never actually played against her in college, but how did that kind of register on your radar over this past, couple of seasons?
Yeah, I mean, I think her impacts, along with Angel Reese and those girls, I think they've grown the game immensely to where it needs to be. I don't know why everyone's upset that they've done so. They've given women's basketball a platform that it's been asking for so long. I don't know if you've seen now, like the WNBA is going to charter flights and
right.
Things are just moving in crazy directions and bigger arenas, and people are coming to games and new teams are being added. Like she came, and her fame and along with Angel Reese came at a perfect time. And they've done amazing things for the game, and we can use that momentum to better ourselves and not kind of like bash on them for what they did and whatnot.
Did you ever play either with or against Caitlin in AAU or anything like that?
We kind of played together at USA trials.
Okay.
I actually played her team, All Iowa Attack, but she was gone at that time. So I've never actually played against her, but I've been in the same space with her playing basketball at USA.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would have thought at some point there was some overlap when you're talking about,
Yes.
two players of your caliber and that kind of thing. Did you know that she was originally committed to Notre Dame? Like when you were being recruited?
I did know that. And it was interesting. Like the whole thing was so interesting. And I can't believe like if she went to Notre Dame, like that would have been crazy. But
I know, like you think about different paths and all that kind of stuff.
But no, I knew that, and I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. But didn't work out that way.
No, maybe you'll end up being teammates or rivals in a year or so in the WNBA. Who knows? Have you thought about, is it just this year? Is it the next couple years since you have 2 years of eligibility? Have you even thought about that, or is that something for a year or so from now?
I think that decision is something for a year. So it's definitely crossed my mind because, we have a lot of key players leaving this year. But it all depends, so much can change and it depends on where I fall in the draft and whatnot. But, I'm not worried. I'm just going to kind of play and let the game speak for itself and then see where I'm at the end of the year and make a decision then.
All right. Sounds great. The one and only Olivia Miles. Glad to have you here. Glad to hear that your recovery is going so well, and hopefully a good summer for you, and then gear right up and back at it again in November. I'll let you go. I guess you got to call Maddie back now. So.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Absolutely.
All right.
All right. So Olivia Miles, appreciate her joining in. And if you didn't catch all of that, of course, you can find it on Apple, Spotify. That'll be coming up in a little bit, and YouTube as well, for that matter. We'll have the full video interview up later on YouTube. I forgot to compliment her on her cool new hairdo. I should have done that, Jess, before she left. Did you notice that?
I did, actually. I was like, I'm used to seeing Olivia Miles with kind of the afro ponytail or like the afro headband that she usually has going on. And I was like, Wow, she just got her stuff twisted up, and it looked good.
It did. Well, Jesse is here, and this is a full show that we've got tonight after we missed out on yesterday. Are you ready for some rapid fire?
Let's do it. I didn't even hear what happened yesterday, but today you had Ryan Roberts, Olivia Miles, and then me.
I know.
It's a full slate.
All-star cast here tonight on the show. All right, so ESPN.com's Adam Rittenberg has Notre Dame as a dark horse national title contender heading into this season. He says, quote, "The big key is getting more from the quarterback spot in the passing game against top competition," end quote. Do you buy or sell that as Notre Dame's biggest question heading into this season?
Yeah, I 100% buy that as Notre Dame's biggest question. I feel like that's been Notre Dame's biggest deficiency over the last, 3, 4, 5 seasons is they have a defense up to the par. They have a run game and an offensive line up to the par, which they have a quarterback and a downfield threat who can get you a big play when you need it the most, right? Like Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State. I know this is like a big, comparison here, but everyone knew at times the ball was going to him and he still produced and made plays, right? Like, I'm not saying it needs to be to that degree, but it felt like last season against Ohio State, against Clemson, some of these big losses that Notre Dame had, they could have used, a quarterback wide receiver duo to really, lean on in some of those crucial moments. So I do believe if Notre Dame can clean up his quarterback and wide receiver, passing attack, they would be considered one of the most legitimate, well-rounded teams in the country.
Yeah, I think he hit it on the head. And really, when you look at, as you said, not just this season, but Notre Dame over the last few years, that has been the biggest difference. Like you look a few years back, there was a, like when Ian Book was here, I think it was 2018, 2019 season. The split was very obvious for Ian Book. Like he feasted on the lesser teams on the schedule, but as the degree of difficulty went up, that's where the passing numbers, started to, get a little bit more shaky. And like you look at Sam Hartman last year, he only completed 43% against Clemson. He completed 58% against Louisville. He was a little bit, a lot better just from a completion percentage against Ohio State. But when you combine those 3 games, he had 3 total touchdowns and 5 interceptions in those games. And then, like you throw in the fumbles that he had against Louisville as well. But just from a pure passing standpoint, 3 interceptions, 5 interceptions, 3 touchdowns against those 3 teams, Clemson, Louisville, and Ohio State. You've got to get better. And if you flip the numbers and you win 2 of those games, you're a playoff team most likely last year. And the playoff field is obviously expanding this year, so it's going to be a little bit easier. But I'm not going to say it doesn't matter what you do against Northern Illinois, Miami. Like, obviously, you still have to take care of business in those games. But again, the reason you went out and you got a guy like Riley Leonard from the transfer portal is and the reason that you went out and got Mike Denbrock after Jared Parker left. You've got to do better. You've got to be more consistent against the better teams on the schedule. That is obviously how you not only get to the playoff, but win playoff games and ultimately win a national championship. You got to get better at the quarterback position. That's why you got Riley Leonard this year. And I think that Rittenberg hit it on the head with this. A lot of the, national guys can miss the mark sometimes, but I think he hit it, the nail on the head. To me, that is number one. And as Joe says, the O-line is still a question, but I think
I don't. If with Notre Dame's history, I just what have we been shown that they're going to struggle figuring out putting together offensive line? Like
they're ultimately going to figure out the offensive line. That's what the odds say.
Yeah, right? And while it might take maybe a game or 2 at the beginning of the season, sure, but I Notre Dame's offensive line will be just fine. And kind of what you were talking about last season, what did the good teams do against Notre Dame? Louisville, Notre Dame, or Ohio State, Clemson, they loaded the box against Notre Dame and said, beat us. Your wide receivers need to beat us. And so when a team is challenging you like that, you have to have a wide receiver and a quarterback who are able to perform, really. And like you said, like this is, if you want to change the narrative around this, you're not going to do it against, dominant performances against Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, Navy, Georgia Tech. Everyone knows that we're talking about the big games, the biggest stages, right? Like, what is your quarterback and wide receiver doing, along with everything else, to be a difference maker?
Agreed. So, to nobody's surprise, Notre Dame's season opener at Texas A&M on August 31st is going to be in prime time, 7:30 p.m. kickoff Eastern time on ABC. Over under 4.5 other games on Notre Dame's schedule this season that will also be primetime games.
I went with the under on this one, and I think if the games that stick out to me for primetime are going to be Georgia Tech, Florida State, and then USC. So you have 3 there. I really don't see them getting any of the other games because, well, I know that the only reason I'm saying Georgia Tech is because that's going to be inside the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. USC and Florida State are the other games I anticipate to be kind of ranked versus ranked matchup. So I really only see 3 games.
Now, they haven't announced it officially, but Pete Bavacqua, in one of the interviews that he did recently, said that the Army Shamrock Series game is going to be a primetime game. Again, it's not official yet, so we don't know for sure. So that, like, I'm looking at that Georgia Tech game wondering, that's kind of a swing game for me, because even when they go on the road this season, there aren't many, big prime games, because just the way things shaped up, when you look at the ACC schedule, there aren't a lot of other opportunities for some primetime games like you've seen before. I do wonder, as Carberry Q says, about that Louisville game, especially
That's
if they
a swing
are.
game for sure.
Yeah. And typically, that is a home game. Typically, NBC makes its announcements before the season. But when you look at the home schedule, Florida State is the obvious one. The Army Shamrock Series game falls under the NBC contract, so that makes sense. You're doing a special game at Yankee Stadium. You're going to celebrate, the 100-year anniversary of Grantland Rice and the Four Horsemen and all those different things out there. So that makes sense. The Louisville game and that Georgia Tech game that you're talking about are kind of the swing games for me, because, again, there's just not a whole lot of other opportunities to get primetime on the road other than USC. And anytime they go to the West Coast, they pretty much seem to be in primetime. So I'm going to go over. I'm going to say the temptation by Disney to give Notre Dame some kind of other primetime game is going to be too much. I'm going to go over the 4.5. Are you sitting under still?
Yes, I still believe in the under.
Okay. All right. So Jesse is going under. Michael Park saying 4. I'm going to go over and say 5 others besides that Texas A&M game. And again, Purdue in week 3, when Notre Dame goes to West Lafayette, that's going to be a 3:30 game on CBS. We found that out today as well. CBS gobbled them up as part of their new Big Ten package. So 3:30 CBS game at Purdue. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame men's basketball getting a commitment today from 6'10" grad transfer forward Nikita Konstantinovsky is blank.
Is a great addition to the depth along this Notre Dame basketball roster. You look at a guy like this, and he's had quite the journey. He started out in JUCO. I believe he went to another kind of smaller D1, and then he went on to Monmouth after this, and now he's ending at Notre Dame. So if my math serves me right, this might be his 4th destination. And so to start off from being a JUCO guy and then getting to finish your career at Notre Dame, I think that's tremendous, right? Like when you think of the dream, like and the ability to continue on playing basketball and that sort of thing, like imagine starting at JUCO and then ending your career at Notre Dame. And so do I think he's going to be some difference maker? No, but I think he will add key depth. And I think he is very lengthy and a Micah Shrewsbury defense. So I think that he will be used to really be an athletic big man, sort of, right? Like the ability to be a stretch 5 if they need him to step out and guard the perimeter. He's more than just a down low player. So I really enjoy his versatility for how big he is.
Yeah, stretch 5. Yeah, that's stretch 5. You don't hear stretch 5 too often. Stretch 4 a little bit more. That guy's going to shoot some threes, but he has not attempted a three-pointer in his career. But you're right. From a defensive standpoint, I think he can step out and be able to do some of that. But you're right. He's well-traveled. Northeastern Oklahoma A&M Junior College for a couple of years, Tulsa for a couple of years. Had an injury that kept him out of his second year at Tulsa, so he does still have eligibility remaining after his 1 year at Monmouth. But he had nice numbers, 9.3 points, 8.3 rebounds in 23 and a half minutes. So even that, like 8.3 rebounds in 23 and a half minutes, that's a pretty healthy number right there. They needed size after Kerry Booth left.
Right.
And they got some size. And, like they're going to get a little bit of size.
It's versatile size, too.
Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right. Some versatile size. They'll get some size back with Garrett Sundra, the freshman, coming in. But freshman, what exactly you're going to get, you don't exactly know. Sir Muhammad, 6'7" guard coming in, and then Cole Serta as well. But, again, Booth left, Zona left. Those were two guys who are both in that 6'10" range. So they had to go out and get it. Keba and Tay Davis were their top two rebounders this season at 5.4 and 5.1. So if this guy, Konstantinovsky from Kyiv, Ukraine, can go out and give them like 7.5 to 8 rebounds per game, I think that you would take that, because that was, again, when you look at 5.4 and 5.1 being your top two rebounders, they needed to go out and find someone who could go after some boards, and I think that he gives them someone who can go do that for you.
Yeah, and I mean, worst comes to worst, he's a guy that is just gonna work tremendously hard, right? Like that's already proven, getting from the JUCO all the way to Notre Dame. And so, even if he's not eating up a ton of playing minutes, like he's gonna play, but if he's not getting 20 to 30 minutes per game, he's still a guy in practice that's going to work hard and kind of push everyone else around him, right? And so I think that it's a very much a type of player that fits Micah Shrewsbury's culture, right? Like he doesn't have to kind of change who this guy is. This guy's naturally going to fit into what Shrewsbury's been trying to do in his second season.
And you've also now got native Ukrainians on both the men's and women's teams for this upcoming season. Kate Koval, who's played, I think it's the last 3 years in New York, she's originally from Ukraine, and then Konstantinovsky also from Ukraine. So you're going to have a couple of Ukrainians for both teams over there. Little international flavor. We haven't had a lot of international in a while. So the EA Sports College Football 25 cover is out. The cover has players from all teams walking through a stadium tunnel and out onto the field. Players from Michigan, Texas, Colorado are the most prominently featured. There you go. Jesse's got the image. Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Alabama, USC, among the others that are the most visible on the cover. So what do you think of the College Football 25 cover, Jess?
I think it's a great cover for a sports game that is reintroducing itself back into the world, right? Because we talked about this. Like, who do you decide to put on the cover after being away for so long? Well, you put everyone on the cover, right? And then you make the most prominent schools, the teams that had the most recent success. And then I think in front of that is kind of the tier that you would say has been kind of the most, nationally dominant over the last 2 decades or so, right? Like Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame being those 4 kind of teams. Like if you could see my cursor on the show, this is Notre Dame over here. This is Alabama here. This is Clemson here. This is Ohio State here. Obviously, you got to have a Michigan player, front and center because they just won a national championship. Quinn Ewers is probably, one of the top-rated quarterbacks, and Texas just came back from their first playoff appearance in a while. Really, the only person that doesn't fit is Travis Hunter from Colorado, but we know that because of the national attention that they get, Colorado is going to be in there somewhere.
I feel like if anything, Alabama did just go to the playoff last year, along with Texas and Michigan, who are along with Hunter. Like I do feel like Jalen Milroe and Hunter should probably be switched, if anything. And I do really? You're gonna put Colorado that prominently after the finish they had last year? That's the only thing I question is the prominence that Colorado was given on this cover. Otherwise, I love it because it includes a little bit of everybody. It's got last names on the back of the jerseys as they enter the tunnel. It's like we're all in on this thing. We're going in together. We're all a part of this game, and we'll get to the last names here in a minute. But it's like we're all in on this, and because those guys have their last names in there, they're getting the paychecks as well for the old NIL.
Yeah,
for taking part.
I had to correct myself. The team in front of Travis Hunter is actually Georgia and not Clemson. So you have Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, but still very fitting, right? Because it's like, again, you have Michigan and Texas just in the playoffs again, and the only person like you could completely do without Colorado. Like before last season, who was Colorado to college football?
Exactly. And Josh says, any truth about Deion being upset his son wasn't on the cover? Probably. I mean, I don't know. Deion's always got something to be kind of upset about, it seems like. But, I felt like when we were talking a couple of weeks ago about what the cover might look like, I said do regional covers so that you can have, like out west, you have maybe a USC guy on the cover or an Oregon guy or both, depending on what part of the country that you're selling it in, or out this way you've got a Notre Dame guy, and down you've got an Alabama, whatever it happens to be, multiple covers. But I like this because it's got a little bit of everybody, so everyone's included in the first year. I think it's a really good cover, other than the fact that Colorado and Hunter is so prominent in this, because I do question that. They finished with a losing record. You should have the teams that actually went somewhere last year,
right,
is the most prominent spots. But speaking of the last names on the back, you did see so many of the last names on the backs of those players. Do you buy or sell that it's time for Notre Dame to add their names to the jerseys full time when you consider things like this and the NIL stuff that goes along with it?
Yeah, I believe that, this really, I don't feel strongly either way about this. Like, I wouldn't be mad, one way or the other. I'm just going to give you the side that I lean towards more so right now. And I would say with, things like the NIL and getting the name, image, and likeness out there, I don't mind seeing the last names on the back of the uniforms. But then on the flip side, I understand the whole thing of, you're not playing for the name on the back. You're playing for, the team on the front or whatever, that whole thing. But, I just think with where things have entered into this NIL era, it makes more sense to have last names on the jerseys so players can fully capitalize when they make a big moment. Everyone watching can say, oh, that's the linebacker, Drake Bowen, who just made a great tackle on that play, right? Because the common fan isn't going to be like, let me look up number 34 real quick on the roster and see who just made that tackle. So I think it benefits the players more in the NIL era to have their names on the uniforms.
I think so as well. And I think it would be just another step for Notre Dame to take to sort of signify that we're all in on NIL, even though,
Yes.
Maybe there's some people who tried to use that against Notre Dame. It would allow Notre Dame to just a small gesture to say, we are in on this. And when this game isn't going to be the only opportunity, there are other things, like where different companies sell the jerseys and those kind of things where players will be able to take advantage of that. And, the other aspect of this is college football, and two guys can wear the same number. And, I think just a small thing, there's less confusion on game day. If you actually have like Jeremiah Love wearing, I guess now Jeremiah actually switched numbers though, didn't he? So maybe that's a bad example, but you know what I'm saying? You've got a guy on offense and a guy on defense who are both wearing the same number, like Deion Colzie and Xavier Watts, for example. There are two prime examples. They both wear number 0. And every once in a while, you get a number confusion by the PA announcer or the TV announcer or whatever it happens to be. But if the spotter and the people on TV can actually see that it's Colzie and not Watts or vice versa, I think that makes it a little easier as well. But, look, Lou Holtz is the one who kind of started this when, because there was a stretch prior to Lou Holtz where they were wearing the names on the back. So it's not like it's completely unprecedented that, Notre Dame has worn names on the backs of the jerseys before. Lou Holtz flipped it. We are in a completely different era right now because we're talking about going on 40 years since that happened. And they do make the switch, like they do put the names on the backs for bowl games. So it's not like they don't do it at all right now. So I don't see any reason in the era that we're living in that Notre Dame shouldn't have the names on the backs of the jerseys. Fill in the blank. The full NFL schedule for the upcoming season will be announced on Wednesday, but we do have a couple of different matchups that are out there. Chiefs against Ravens in the NFL season opener is blank.
It's electric. It's exactly what I asked for probably a week or two ago when we posed the question of who we thought should the Chiefs face in the season opener on Thursday night. I didn't want a divisional opponent. I didn't want anyone from the NFC South, aka the Saints and the Buccaneers. Basically, you wanted it to be a quality game, but I don't think you should waste a divisional matchup in the very first, game of the season. So
Concur.
I think it's a great balance of we get the AFC Championship rematch. It's going to be enough of a matchup that's going to draw everyone in, and I think you're going to see good football too. So I thought that they hit it right on the head, and it's the perfect matchup.
Yeah, I think it's great as well. I was thinking, I think one of my suggestions was maybe the Bengals. I kind of like that idea. The Chiefs are actually going to play the Bengals the following week. So, they're going to go boom, boom against AFC North Ravens and then Bengals week 1 and week 2. That is not an easy start to the season, but it's a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. So I love it from that aspect. It, it gives you a lot hanging on that week 1 game. And remember, as DK has pointed out before, they did host the Lions in week 1 last year. The Lions won that game in the season opener, who went on to win the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs, of course, did repeat. But this is a great week 1 right out of the chute, big primetime matchup. Chiefs, Ravens, Mahomes, and Jackson right out of the gates at Arrowhead Stadium. So I like it a lot. It's a great open to an NFL season. A couple of the biggest stars in the game. So next, same week, but a couple of days later, Cleveland Browns are going to host the Dallas Cowboys. 4:25 opening weekend kickoff. What's more significant, that it's Browns Cowboys or that it's going to be Tom Brady's first game as an NFL broadcaster with Fox?
Yeah, for selfish reasons, it's more important that it's Browns Cowboys, right? Because not only there's just so many good things going on with this being a week 1 game. One, the NFL season gets to open up in Cleveland. I'll get to watch my Cowboys play to open the season. And then second of all, I have all my friends texting me already, talking crap, getting ready about, we going to the game. We got to go to the game. You know what I mean? It's just, to me, there's no better way to open the season than your favorite team coming to the city that you live in, and it gets to, kick off their season essentially, right? And I think the even cooler part is like the Browns never play 4:00 games. They are strictly a 1 p.m. game just about every week, right? The only time they play out of that time slot is if it's Monday night, Thursday night, or you know what I mean, some special game, right? That just your standard typical Sunday game is never at 4:00 in Cleveland. So I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. And again, for selfish reasons, I can't be more excited. The Cowboys are kicking off their season in Cleveland, and I get to be there.
And you are like a 10-minute train ride away from the stadium. Right?
Exactly.
The only disappointment is I can't wear that fabulous new Cowboys starter jacket that I got because it's going to be September 8th and it's going to be boiling outside. DK, I don't know if he's just trolling me, wanting me to say the name, asking who the Browns are opening against that next day. Joe asking if we're taking.
Well, now that it's going to be a 4:30 game, I think I have to.
Are you saying you can't keep yourself from getting tanked at a 4:30 in the afternoon game?
No, I'm just saying I would like to not worry about the consequences.
I hear you. The Cowboys typically open the season on a Sunday night, or like a few years
against
ago,
a divisional opponent.
Right? Like they've more times than not, like last year, it was Philadelphia. They've played the Giants quite a bit on Sunday night. A few years ago, after the Bucks, they played those Thursday games against the Buccaneers to open the season. They've played those kind of games. So this is pretty rare, as you said, that the Browns aren't playing in a 1 o'clock window. They were a playoff team last year, so that does help them. But this is not just 425. The NFL wants all eyes on this game and Tom Brady, because this is Brady's broadcast debut. There's not going to be a CBS game, a national game in that window. This is going to be the only national game of that opening weekend in the 425 time slot. So the NFL wants everybody to be watching their GOAT in his broadcasting debut with the Cowboys and the Browns. So I think it's an even bigger deal that it's Tom Brady's debut. And Ryan and I were touching on this a little bit earlier. I think Brady has been prepping for this. They brought him to New York. It was him and Michael Strahan out there yesterday. If you saw a little bit of that video for the Fox upfronts where they made all these announcements, they announced some college football matchups that they're going to have as well. They announced the USC UConn women's game that they're going to broadcast on December 21st. So it's a big deal to Fox and to the NFL that Tom Brady is jumping in there and doing his first NFL game. So I think it's an even bigger deal that it's Tom Brady's first game in the NFL. So even if I'm at this game, I'm going to have to record it, come back and watch a little bit about
yeah, see? Fred Benson bring facts here. The Browns do not play at 425. Like, this is a big deal. I just think that the Cowboys are in town. Tom Brady is in town. You're talking about two playoff teams from last year. Like, this is a really good, solid way to open up the season, and Cleveland is going to be buzzing. Like, it is going to be like I will, for what it's worth, Cleveland fans, for as bad as they've been, for as long as they've been, some of the most loyal, rambunctious fans I've ever seen out there. Like, you would think that they're a playoff team, Super Bowl team every year.
Well, I don't disagree with that. The old Dog Pound, that was a place to be, Memorial Stadium. And don't they have like some kind of memorial down there from Memorial Stadium? Have you ever been down to that area?
That's a good question.
I know that was before your time.
I should know.
The question is, who's buying these tickets? And, I told your mom last night, I'm not sitting in the upper deck. Like, there were some fairly reasonable, and by reasonable, you're still going to have to spend at least $400 per ticket. But I want to know, where are these seats coming? We've got to move on these seats fast if it's going to happen. Like, are your buddies going along with this too? What's the whole setup with this going to be? We got to move on this.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Some moves need to be made because the tickets are only going to be increasing. This is funny. We will get to see how overrated Myles Garrett is. One of my buddies texted me last night and said, can't wait for Myles Garrett to line up across that rookie that you guys just drafted all game. And I was like, oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm worried that we're going to shell out a lot of money and go see like 18 points total scored.
Well, and that's the crappy part, right? Because it's like the season opener at the end of the day.
I know. But it's pretty exciting. We were wondering when it would be, so it turns out it's going to be September 8th. Cowboys at Cleveland. That's the same weekend Notre Dame hosts Northern Illinois the day before. So we're expecting an afternoon game for Notre Dame and Northern Illinois the day before Dallas and Cleveland in Cleveland. All right. I think that's it for today, right? That's all we have.
That's all we have.
All right. Well, appreciate you being here today, specifically Jesse. Thanks to Olivia Miles for joining us. Thanks to Ryan Roberts earlier in the show as well. Have a good one, and we will talk to you tomorrow. I believe Vince will be floating back in, if I've got the schedule right. So until then, we will talk to you then. Hit the like button before you leave. We do appreciate it. And of course, it helps us out. Subscribe, rate, review, listen to your podcasts. And we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.